Now we're going to start navigating within the system of triangles. I'm just going to break this apart into forward-facing triangles and rear-facing. Okay, basically where your head is matched up with your training partner's head, or your head is more pointed towards your training partner's legs, as the two main situations where we're going to be able to spin around our training partner's body to get to different types of triangles. So we'll start with the forward-facing versions. Okay, so we'll start with the triangles that you're most familiar with. Okay, Omote Senkaku, where we lock into our training partner's neck like so. Now, the most common reason that we transfer from Omote Senkaku elsewhere is because my training partner takes his arm out and blocks the hip. Why does he do this? He does this because when I try to take an angle on this side, give me the arm again, it enhances the triangle. So when he blocks my hip, it makes it quite hard for me to get that full angle on that side. However, it changes things in such a way that it makes it easier for me to get an angle on the other side. So what we typically do is we kind of lock up our trap triangle, we control our training partner's elbow and our training partner's head, and we're going to start turning towards this side, shooting into my training partner's other leg, and we're going to start inverting onto our shoulders. And as we do so, we kick our hips up to a position where I can lock a figure four, and my hip is directly attached to my training partner's neck. This is what we refer to as a reverse triangle, okay? If I just lock up a reverse triangle while I'm square to the opponent, it's pretty much useless, okay? I can't really squeeze to strangle my training partner or anything like that. The only thing that I could do from here is maybe start doing some attacks on my training partner's arm, but I certainly can't finish the strangle. So in order to make this useful to us, okay, my training partner hides the arm, I scoop into the opposite leg that we normally would, okay? I dip this knee towards the floor, okay? So this knee comes shallow. This knee comes high over my opponent's head, so my hips and knees are shifting around the opponent, okay? My butt starts to face the ceiling, and I lock up like so. If my hip pocket attaches to my training partner's neck, I'm doing a good job, and I'll likely be able to strangle from here. Okay, by driving my hip pocket in and holding onto the leg and pulling myself close. Okay, now, let's say I've achieved, no, you can stay there. Let's say I've achieved this forward-facing triangle. It's a reverse triangle, and I'm having a tough time finishing it for whatever reason. Perhaps my training partner is doing a good job of keeping me away from that leg. He's constantly walking away, making it hard for me to pivot properly, all right, and making it hard for me to finish that transition. If my training partner keeps his legs away from me, making it hard to hook in, it tends to be easier to knock my training partner over in this direction. As I knock my training partner over, I have two more offensive options. Now, technically the first offensive option is just a Omote Senkaku all over again from the mounted position. I just lift my training partner's head up, and I switch to mounted triangle. Okay, like so. Okay. So once again, we had a reverse triangle in play. Okay. And all I did was lift my training partner's head up and switched to that mounted triangle situation. Okay. Now, from here, okay, if I was in mounted triangle or if I was in reverse, doesn't make too much of a difference. Okay. I can make passage to back triangle simply by maneuvering around my training partner's arm. I just shift my hips out to the side and lock up like so. Let's rotate in. Hips line up. So, from mounted triangle, I lift my training partner's head up and I spin around. Like so, moving to my training partner to the back. If I shift my hips out to the side, I get a little bit of a better bite of the actual triangle so I can finish. Okay? Really what we're looking to do here is trying to create this connection against my training partner's neck for the finish. Okay? So let's look at that whole series again, and then we're going to add one more. Okay? We already saw it in previous videos, so I'm only going to touch on it. So we have a Omote Senkaku, which we typically look to scoot out to this side to finish. When we have trouble with that, we can move into reverse triangles, where I drive my hips in. Okay? When my training partner keeps his legs away from me, we can hip into the opponent and knock them down to the floor. As we hip into the opponent and knock them down to the floor, we typically look to transfer to mounted triangles now, where we walk our hands past the hips to get the strangle. Now, from the mounted triangle, all I really need to do is turn my hips around the corner to get to the back triangle. You could also do it from reverse triangle. That's what I did the first time. Okay? When we get to the back triangle, we just scoot our hips around so that our knee matches up with our training partner's neck. Okay? From here, I grab the far arm and I finish. Now, there is one other triangle that we could always switch to while we're in these forward-facing triangle situations, whether it's from mounted triangle or whether it's from back triangle. And all I do is switch to ankle senkaku, where my ankle matches up with my training partner's neck. Okay? If I had back triangle, I would just have to switch my feet. Okay? You guys have probably been in situations where you lock up back triangle and you lock the wrong way. Whenever you lock a back triangle the wrong way, it's not great for strangling, but it is good for switching to ankle senkaku like we did in previous tapes. Okay? Like so. So as you can see, whenever I'm facing my training partner, with a degree of rotation, I can switch to almost any of these triangles from most positions. If I have the reverse triangle, I can find ways to get to the regular triangle. If I have the regular triangle, I can get to the reverse. Okay? If I have a back triangle, I can get to any of the other triangles as long as they're forward facing. The only triangles that will be difficult to move to are the rear facing triangles, and we'll go over those next. Okay, well, there's quite a few forward-facing triangles that we can move ourselves to. There's really only two rear-facing triangles that are relevant, okay? And that's the inverted triangle and the Yoko Senkaku, okay? We're basically referring to them as rear-facing so I can categorize them and fit them into the same box. They are very different triangles, but they are interconnected, just like all of the forward-facing triangles are interconnected. And when I say that, I basically mean by moving around my training partner, all right, and with minor adjustments, I can move to each triangle, retrospectively. So as my training partner, or respectively, I should say, not retrospectively. All right, my training partner is going to be in top position. One of my favorite ways to get to an inverted triangle is to just trap my training partner's arm between my legs. How does that go about happening? Okay, often it's the case as I'm trying to hip escape, etc., away from my training partner's side control, that I can look to score an elbow inside my training partner's bicep. And I can almost shrimp my knee inside my training partner's bicep like so, and trap my training partner's arm between my legs. We'll look at that again. Okay, Stevie's not really about setups, but it's a fun one to get to inverted triangle situations. So I trap one of my training partner's arms, and the other arm I'll just hug like so. No need for udigatame or anything like that, just hugging and controlling the shoulder. Now I'd like to make a relatively quick transition here, okay, while I control my training partner's arm. Because if I try to hold this for too long, go ahead and start using your knees to wedge out. And, a training partner will definitely clear this. So it's got to be relatively quick. After I trap my training partner's arm, okay, I look to lace my right leg through if possible so that I have control with my right leg while I feed to my left. Okay? If I just have control with my left leg and I reach, he might pull his arm free. Okay? So what we like to do, come back. Okay? Elbow comes in. We pass off to the other leg. Okay? Now, very briefly, I flick my leg around the corner. From this situation, I want to make sure that my knee does not come high over my training partner's neck. Very hard to finish from here. I have to pull my training partner in. So my knees come to my chest, I bring him towards me, and I reach for my training partner's elbow. If I can't grab the elbow, I'll initially grab the wrist. Work my way to the elbow, and hike my knee into my training partner's neck. From here, we lock up. Let me finish. It's a particularly tight triangle. Now, we can navigate to pretty much from this situation, we can pretty much only navigate to Yoko Senkaku. Okay? So as I get into this position, because I'm rear facing, all of those other triangles don't exist. In order to get them, I'd have to take my legs out, completely reposition. It's an unrealistic transition. But Yoko Senkaku is right here. Let's say for whatever reason, maybe my knee got high, I can't make the proper adjustment, I can't reach my training partner's wrist, I'm not able to finish my inverted triangle. What I'm going to begin to do is grab my training partner's lower body and bring it over. So I reach for my training partner's legs and hips. Okay, I can even grab the far leg, and I'm going to look to bring my knees to my chest and carry my training partner over to the other side. As I do so, I can back heel like so, and I can begin driving my hip into my training partner's neck for the strangle. Okay? Now, from here, technically, I could always move back to the inverted triangle if I want to. I would just have to hop over my training partner's hips. You don't see that transition all that often, mostly because I think Yoko Senkaku is seen as superior to the inverted triangle. But if you wanted to, the transition is there. Basically, I'd probably hang on to a Kimura or something while I bring my knees to the floor, and then I could very easily fall back down to the other side and reposition myself, locking like so. And we can continue rolling in that continuum, all right, to get the different triangles, okay? But that's pretty much what we've got. We've got our forward-facing and our rear-facing triangles, and we can maneuver ourselves about those triangles. Now we're going to look to transition to some other submissions from those triangles. Okay, guys, so now we're going to take a look at some triangles to legs from forward-facing situations. The only forward-facing triangle that I had categorized before that probably won't apply would be back triangle. A little far-fetched probably to go into your training partner's legs from there. The only way I could maybe see that is if your training partner voluntarily started using their legs to try to escape the back triangle. So we're going to skip that one and just talk about most of the other forward-facing triangles where I'm on bottom. Okay, when I get into a Mote Senkaku, okay, the first and most obvious transition into the legs is as my training partner steps up and starts trying to extend away from the triangle, I can scoop into my opponent's legs. Okay, it's very likely from these sorts of situations that my training partner will have legs stepped up because one of his main methods of escape is to try to pull out of the triangle, all right, and angle out. Go ahead, yeah. And pulling my training partner's head and arm out of the triangle. And this is the way that my training partner typically looks to escape. So we anchor ourselves into our training partner's knee, and we have our training partner's first leg to go after. Again, we have some nice outside attacks here. Okay, I can either go into an Arimi Ashigurami situation, or I can go right into outside Ashigurami, moving into outside heel hooks, various toe holds, right? Maybe even knee bar situations if we so choose. Okay? Or, if I can get my training partner's leg into extension, as we've discussed before, we have options to figure four the legs, to pass into inverted heel hooks from either 50-50 or cross Ashigurami. Okay? Now, if my training partner elects to stand completely up onto its feet, it may be possible here for me to start passing my head between two legs. At this point, I have options to attack either leg with pretty much anything I'd like. Okay? And so long as I'm able to get my head between my training partner's legs, we're good to go with that transition. If we're still out here and I only have the one leg, it might be difficult. But if as I'm trying to scoop grip, I'm able to use a thumb post and get my head to the inside, well, now I have one and two legs to go after. So if I'm going after the original leg in a standing position, I can put my cross Ashigurami or 50-50 in right away and just collect two legs and sit my training partner down. Okay? Just move your upper body so you can see. All right, right into inverted heel hooks. Okay? Once again, just standing over me. Nope. Standing over me, behind me. Good. Okay? So I have that near leg. Of course, I also have the far leg. We just have to put the other leg through. Okay? Let's say we go to cross Ashigurami this time. We sit our training partner down. Okay? Inverted heel hooks, or if I had gone for 50-50, all right, we would do an inverted heel hook from there. Come back up. Same thing, standing behind me. Okay, once again, my training partner's in this situation. If there's some other submissions that I might be interested in, okay, perhaps some of the outside stuff, one of the things I can do is to knock my training partner's hands down to the floor. So I take a heel to my training partner's butt. Instead of turning and cutting the corner and all these things, I just focus on pushing his hands down towards the floor. I can even use the secondary leg to help. Come back. I'll just use that leg on his hamstring or even a knee behind and push my training partner down to the mat. Okay? Now from here I can go into almost anything. Let's rotate a little bit. Okay? From here I can catapult myself into knee bar situations, whether it be lap or just standard. Okay? I can move myself off. All right? into outside locks. I can do any number of different things when my training partner's back down on his hands. Okay? So once again, he comes up. And from that standing position, I just knock my training partner forward. I can use my knee and my foot, or I can come around the hamstring and knock my training partner down any way that I'd like. All right, and then I have a plethora of different submissions to choose from. Cross ashi, 50-50 transitions. Okay, just continuing to vault my training partner forward, and then going back into outside locks if I so choose. Toe holds. Okay, you put yourself in a situation where you have almost anything that you could want. Okay. Now, we did all of that just off of the regular front-facing triangle. Okay? Similar things will be available once we start switching to reverse triangle. Okay? I would say that in general, it's probably harder to get to the second leg from a reverse triangle sort of situation. Okay? It's probably going to be easiest to release and just move into the same side leg again for any number of attacks. Now, go down to bottom position. Assuming I was able to move into an ankle senkaku. On my training partner. And I stayed in that orientation. Okay? It is very possible I could transfer to my training partner's legs again. Once again, probably less likely that I'm going to get to the situations where I can control two legs. Probably more likely we're going to stick with the one-legged option here. Okay? From this situation, we'll go on the attack. Okay? So we have options from front-facing omote senkaku, okay, a ankle senkaku, and a reverse triangle, okay? And also technically, no, that's pretty much it. Because the mounted triangle, you're going to be so far away. Just go back down. If we were in a mounted triangle situation, we're so far away from our opponent's legs now, the transitions don't really make a whole lot of sense. Same thing goes if we moved to a back triangle on our training partner. Unless my training partner somehow volunteers his knees and legs towards us, I don't see any leg entrances happening here. And more than likely, he's fighting with his hands and he's walking across the mat. All right, if that did happen, okay, and for some reason you gain access to one or both of your training partner's legs, of course, I could always release and move my way into the legs. He'd kind of have to volunteer his legs to me, though. Maybe in some way he might believe he's going to use his legs to try to untangle the triangle. Okay, no problem. We'll attack the legs just like so, putting in our outside locks, okay, or training partner goes in for the leg again, okay. As I collect my training partner's two legs, I can go into double trouble situations. It's also a good way to work for knee bars and even toe holds on the opposite leg. A lot of offensive options from our forward-facing triangles. Okay, guys, now we're going to take a look at some rear-facing triangles and how we can enter the legs through those. All right, working in an inverted triangle situation like we did before, as I trap my training partner's arm and cover my training partner's neck. Of course, we have a triangle option here. What often is the case, though, during this inverted triangle action, like I'd really like to try to finish, all right, but often it's the case that my training partner starts trying to use his knee against my hip, all right, to try to pry himself away, probably your rear knee. Yes, exactly, all right, trying to pull himself out in a way. Okay, he could use his near knee as well. It doesn't really make too much of a difference, but he uses his legs to try to pry himself out. As my training partner starts pulling himself free, of course, we have obvious leg transitions from here. Even if my training partner doesn't try to yank himself free, and I decide to say to myself during my inverted triangle, it's probably unlikely that I'm going to be finishing the inverted triangle, so I'm better suited to attack the legs. I'm probably going to attack the nearest leg, okay, and then start working on my transitions, whether they be outside, okay, rolling my training partner through, and breaking, okay, or whether they be my scoop grip transition, where move my training partner away, and we start locking cross ashiguramis. And I can move into inverted heel hooks, or even pass off into knee bar actions. Okay? So, that's what it looks like from an inverted triangle. What happens when we get to side triangle? Training partner lays down flat. Okay? Assuming managed to enter a good side triangle. Okay? I'm in this situation. It's quite easy for me to reach through, get a hold of my training partner's near side leg. Probably won't be doing too much with the far side leg unless I grab it later on. Okay? It's going to be few and far between where I go to reach that leg. Most of my training partner's defensive reactions involve just legs on the floor. So I'm just going to look to grab inside my training partner's knee. Okay? From here, I look to start releasing my legs, but keeping them tight. I stay tight to my training partner. If I just release my legs, now my training partner might have entries into my legs. Okay? Go ahead and step over my leg. Yeah, you see what I'm saying? There could be potential problems here. So, what I'm going to do is stay relatively tight in the triangle action. All right, I'm going to start propping myself up. Now I slide my knee inside my training partner's hip, and I step into my training partner's legs. Makes it a little bit safer where I transition to my training partner's legs this way. Makes it less likely that he's going to capitalize on his own counter transition. Okay, so I'm locked up in ankle senkaku. I'm locked up in Yoko Senkaku. Okay, I can even come all the way up if I'd like to my knees. All right, as I come up to my knees, I can look to grab my training partner's leg. I might even pin the second to keep both open. Slide my knee up and step to the inside. From here, we can go into a nice double treble transition for a knee bar or toe hold finish. Okay, and what you're seeing here, again, it's just movement from my training partner's upper body to lower body. Whether it be just immediately grabbing after this leg, all right, and starting to stay nice and tight, slide my knee to the hip, or if I want to start attacking a little bit more from top position, I'll link my arm in, I put my two knees on the floor and keep my ankles crossed. Now from here, I grab one leg, pin the second one down, slide my knee up, and look to step between my training partner's legs like so. Okay? From here, I'll roll through into an inverted heel hook action. Okay? So again, as you can see, we have a variety of good leg locking opportunity presenting itself whenever I lock into triangle actions on my training partner. Now we're going to look at some arm locking transitions. I'm including Kimura in this one because I think it makes a little bit more sense to just break it down by type of triangle because all of the submissions are going to be available to you within those subsets of triangle. So I'm going to start with Omote Senkaku, or the front triangle, my training partner. So as I get into these situations, in front triangle, okay, my training partner has an arm stuck in the move already inherently, okay? Because of this, right, naturally, it's an easy thing, even without really any effort here, okay, to just start barring my training partner's arm against my hip. What we'll often do is just start pushing my training partner's arm like so and going into the break. Now, if my training partner is smart, what he is likely to do when I start doing an action like this is he's likely to bend his elbow, okay, and when he bends his elbow, this is a good opportunity for me to switch to Kimura. Okay? So we'll start things off. Let's rotate so we're a little bit more forward facing to the camera. Okay? So I have my triangle. I initially bar my training partner's arm. Bar my training partner's arm. Okay? So it's against the hip. If my training partner's naive, maybe he taps. More than likely, my training partner maneuvers his elbow. We find ourselves in Kimura. Okay? Well, as we're in the Kimura situation, we'll look to bring the elbow in and hand behind the back. All right, for a good strong finish. Okay? Now, there are some other transitions here that we often like as my training partner's arm starts to head towards the center line. If I have a nice triangle on my training partner, okay, like so, and the arm is towards the center line, I can also bend my training partner's arm to the inside, pulling like so, and I can look to get an Americana action. Typically, this will often result in my training partner straightening out his arm in which case we can go back into Juji Gatame situations. Now, usually if I'm going to hit a Juji on this side, it strengthens me to push my opponent away and go to 3/4 Juji Gatame. Okay? So we're here, we're within the triangle, or we start pushing into our training partner, move into our 3/4 Juji Gatame, and there's our break. Okay? So we have quite a few different options here. Okay, we start by barring the arm against the hip, okay, in whatever way we can. The elbow starts to turn, and we lock up. By the way, notice my legs aren't even locked in a full triangle right now. It doesn't have to be like this. I could even have trap triangle, and these submissions can work. Okay? I hit my Kimura, I finish. Okay? Maybe I bring things back to center line. We might even have a little look at Ude Gatame from here. It's likely that my training partner will start to bring their arm across. We have Americana transitions and Juji. When we go into Juji, it's likely that we kick the head away and go into 3/4 for a strong finish like so. We even have options, and this is the one spot where I do value these on some level. We even have options for wrist locks on my opponent. Okay? Whenever I'm having trouble maneuvering my training partner's arms into one of those stronger submissions because he's doing a good job hiding his arms, I just take the top of my training partner's wrist and I bow it over. Once I've got the wrist bent, I place 2 hands on top, and I'm going to press in. As the elbow goes into my hip, I push down on the wrist. Okay? What this typically results in is my training partner extending his arm, and then we can go into our other submissions on our training partner, whatever we so choose. So basically, you're just looking to follow your training partner's arm around into various submission holds until you can get something to bite, or you can move yourself back into your triangle. Okay? So you have a nice subset of submissions that are available to you without even having to disrupt the triangle that you have. Alright, now we're going to take a look at some of these arm locking transitions from reverse triangle. Okay? Menu will be similar, will be some slight differences. Okay, my training partner moves himself into a situation, okay, where he's hiding his arm. So we moved ourselves off, and we started locking into a reverse triangle. Now, I had mentioned before that when we lock our reverse triangle, we want to do a good job of climbing this hip to our training partner's neck. However, I will say that much like how we had a lot of submissions available to us in Omote Senkaku, where I didn't even have a full triangle locked, this is also true of the reverse triangle. If you find yourself not getting a great angle for reverse triangle, and you have it locked improperly, like my legs are now, you still have hope at using certain submissions on the arms. Okay? So the strangle might not come on, but you can still work on the arm. You could have a correct reverse triangle and still work for submissions. Okay? But I'm actually just going to keep it locked incorrectly for the comfortability of my opponent. Okay? So I'll keep my reverse triangle locked. Like I said, this isn't how you would do it if you wanted to submit your training partner with the triangle, but you can still get your submissions on your training partner's arm. So here's what we're going to look to do. He's hiding that arm. I just use that reverse triangle to start exposing it and controlling my training partner's wrist. From here, I pass my hand through and we work to Kimura. From Kimura, we assume my training partner straightens the arm. All right, we go into Ude Gatame transitions. Now, one of the great things about this Ude Gatame transition is that this can find us going back to our original triangle if we so choose. So a lot of times, I start putting this pressure on the Kimura and he straightens out the arm. This is what's going to allow me to start pivoting off and going back to that original Omote Senkaku if we so choose. Okay? So while the plethora of submissions that are available in Omote Senkaku are maybe not as available in reverse triangle, okay, you don't see me doing things like doing things like the Americana or anything like that. It's unrealistic angle from this position. Okay? While some of those moves are unrealistic, okay, I still have my Kimura. I still have my Ude Gatame. If I felt as though my training partner was turning his arm, I could also go back into that arm locking sequence where I press the arm against my leg. Okay, likely that would result in a bend and go back into Kimura. So we can still interchange with all of these different submission holds, but when we switch to Ude Gatame, that's our path to go back the other direction if we want. Okay, so if you really wanted to finish the original triangle, manipulating the arm is a great way to get there. Now, that Omote Senkaku is that much easier to complete. Now let's take a look at some arm locking submissions that are available to us from ankle senkaku. I don't really like to set my ankle senkakus up from bottom. I think it's a little unrealistic to lock up. All right, so I almost always set them up from top position in that 3/4 juji situation that we discussed before. Let's scoot back so you have plenty of room. All right, and eventually you're going to have to turn to face the camera when I enter into the move. All right, now, as I go to sit up and I start placing myself in good position, all right, to lock up ankle senkaku, one of the things that I can do on my roll through is I can already begin committing to the arm. So if I'm already going to commit to the arm and decide that while I lock ankle senkaku up, my primary action is going to be submitting my training partner's arm, I'm going to make damn sure that my elbow slides to my training partner's wrist. All right, this way I have the maximum leverage when I go to break my training partner's arm. Instead of locking in elbow to elbow like we normally do when we're just controlling our opponent, and maybe I'm just looking for, the ankle senkaku itself as a submission hold. So as I start leaning forward like we do previously, I'm just going to punch this arm up so that I'm at the end of the lever. Okay? Now from here, I start leaning forward as my training partner goes to try to come up instead of rolling underneath him, which I can do. Okay, I can lock ankle senkaku up, and I can break my training partner like a standard armbar. Instead of rolling underneath my training partner, go back. What I much prefer to do in these ankle senkaku situations is to just start trying to finish my training partner belly down. So you're going to see me start straightening my arms out. So as I fall with my knee touching the floor, his hands will probably be connected. I lock my ankle senkaku, but I immediately start breaking right here. Now, he may still try to get up to his knees. Go ahead. But as he does so, his arm gets farther and farther separated from his body. I myself had finished this submission in an EBI, I think off of a Kimura transition. I managed to get to an ankle senkaku and broke somebody here. And I believe Gordon just recently did this to Kyle Bohm. It's a great transition from ankle senkaku to armbar. So scoot in. Once again, I'm starting to set my move up from 3/4 juji. Okay? We're in ankle senkaku. As we do, I'm rolling. I get elbow deep around my training partner's wrist. I lock the triangle. Let's just turn side on so they can see what's going on with the triangle. Triangle's locked even with his hands connected. Hands connected. Hands connected. Okay? I just start extending, belly down. And as my training partner tries to come up, it just gets worse and worse. My training partner gets more and more spread out, and the break happens. I believe in Gordon's match, the arm even dipped down so that it was a little bit more of an Americana action. So even if your training partner's elbow bends, it's hard for me to even do this to Chris because his arm is so inflexible from this position. I can still finish the move. Okay, and again, of course, like I said, you can finish the regular arm bars from ankle senkaku off of your back, just like any other triangle. Okay, but I personally believe that one's the stronger version. Okay. All right, so just a little added. It's getting a little late here at BJJ Fanatic Studios. I forgot one submission off of the ankle senkaku. We can also go after our training partner's forearm for Kimura. If I'm not mistaken, when Ethan Krellinston just savagely snapped somebody's arm in half at ADCC trials, I'm pretty sure this is where he got the Kimura from. Okay, so. Again, I don't really like entering the ankle senkaku from bottom. So we'll enter from top, scoot back. Okay. So fold up, okay, like so. Heel to knee connection, okay. And we're going to start rotating through. As you start rotating through, seeing my training partner's arms connected, okay. I'm going to control both of my training partner's arms like so, just to make sure they're nice and close to me. As his hands are connected, because you don't want to get your arm broken with armbar. All right, what I'm going to do now is feed my hand inside and grab my training partner's wrist and pull my other hand through, fighting for Kimura. This makes for a really interesting, exceptionally tight Kimura. It's hard to actually get the Kimura locked from the beginning. Okay, I really have to do a good job of bringing my training partner's arm in towards me before I can get to this Kimura. If I try to lock it out here, just straighten out the arm, it's almost impossible. That's why I was hugging my training partner's elbow. Lock your hands. Okay. I try to pass my arm through, pull this in nice and tight, get through my training partner's elbow, and press down the wrist. Now, this is exceptionally tight. Like I said, when Ethan did it, he really broke someone's arm badly. Let's rotate a little bit. So, as we roll through the move, we initially hug my training partner's elbows, but we're going to have to pass this arm through, all right, to get nice and close to that elbow. I might even suggest taking your jaw and bringing it over your training partner's forearm to try to hold their arm in place. As you do so, my elbow comes deep and over top as I grab my training partner's wrist for the break. And the good news is this is all just so tight that if you lost that Kimura somehow, you can still finish the strangle and you can still finish a strong Juji Gatame as well. All right, the next thing we're going to be working on is back triangle and various arm locks associated with it. Now, technically, I believe earlier in the DVD, off of one of our transitions, I think in the back system, we covered this, but I'll just reiterate, it's not a problem, okay? If you remember it, if you already know what's going on, by all means, fast forward through this section, all right? As I get into back triangle situations, of course, the main submissions that we have here is the triangle where my knee locks into my training partner's neck, and I can look to pull on my training partner's far elbow to get a strong submission in like so. Now, as far as arm locks go, okay, we follow a few simple rules, all right? In general, we're working out of arm locks on my training partner's arm that's already within the triangle, okay? I wouldn't say it's completely out of the question. Go ahead and lock your hands. I wouldn't say it would completely out of the question to switch off, for example, and try to get a hold of your training partner's opposite side arm. It just doesn't seem productive. Okay, I would say mainly working within the triangle you already have is going to be the safest bet. Moving after this arm is going to be relatively useless. The only thing you're going to be doing involving this arm, lock hands, is focusing on trying to get it separate from the other arm. So when our knee is touching the floor, if we can get our knee to touch the floor, Juji Gatame becomes a very strong submission, either with two posted hands or just extended into my hip like so. Okay, when my knee starts to lift off the floor, Juji Gatame gets a little wishy-washy. Even from here, as I go to try to break, it's very easy for my training partner to turn his elbow, bend your elbow, different directions, and make it difficult for me to finish the Juji. So when the knee's on the floor Juji, that's great. When my knee comes off the floor, maybe my training partner's bridging, whatever the case may be, it's Americana, where I can go double post on the Americana, or grab the elbow. Usually like to sit up for these sorts of things because it makes it easier for me to grab. Or as the wrist rotates the other direction, so I pull into Juji and the wrist rotates the other direction, I sit up and lock into Kimura like so. If my training partner's hands are still connected, for example, and I'm here, no problem, I'll sit through. I get a grip on my training partner's wrist. I pull strongly with my elbow to connect my training partner's elbow to my hip and press my knee against it. Okay, if I leave the arms out here, it's kind of hard to get my extension. Pull everything in tight, and I can break even without my training partner separating his hands. Okay? If for some reason as I'm finishing his Kimura, he bridges the other direction and knocks me back down to my knee, we go right back into our arm lock transition like so. Okay? Alright, so we have various arm locks from here, alright, that we can maneuver through. Alright, mainly the Kimura and the Juji are the two mainstays. Okay? That Americana does play a role. I have seen Gordon submit people with it quite well. And break some pretty bad breaks. Okay? Again, a little reiteration from before. Alright, let's look at rear-facing triangles. We're going to be going into situations where I'm in inverted triangles as well as Yoko Senkaku. Okay? So, as I trap my training partner's arm and I move myself into the inverted triangle, alright, I can place attacks on my training partner's arm. Typically, the main attack that we're looking for here is Kimura, okay? Often when I make this inverted triangle entry, I have an extended arm to begin with, and this triangle is a little shaky. So if you can find a way to get your elbow behind your training partner's elbow and get a hold of your training partner's wrist to break for Kimura, it's a great way to do it. I'll also say this is another great way to rotate your training partner into the Yoko Senkaku situation. So let's say we start breaking with Kimura, my training partner rolls in response. Now we're right into Yoko Senkaku, okay, our side triangle. Of course, we have the triangle as a finish, but we still have our training partner's arm where we can do some good damage here. Now, the traditional Kimura, which would be to put my training partner's hand to the floor, is great, but I don't really have the leverage to break my training partner right now. I kind of have to get up. So, I'm going to briefly go over how that works. Scoot in, okay. Flatten out your legs so you can see a little bit better. So my knee is going to touch the floor, but notice I'm back heeling the whole time. I don't just leave my legs separated. I strong back heel. My knee touches the floor, and I'm just going to rotate so you guys can see. my ankles cross underneath my training partner. If I leave my ankles like this, it's too easy for him to unentangle and get his head and arms out of there. Okay? So I cross my ankles like so whenever I come up on top of my opponent. From here, I can get the hand to the mat, and I can begin turning and breaking. Once I decide I'm going to break with Kimura, I will pretty much forego my top position and start turning to the side. I won't get nearly as strong of breaks here as I'll get if I turn the corner on my training partner and really push the arm across the body. Okay? Now, it can often be difficult from a Yoko Senkaku situation to actually physically separate the arms. Okay? Keep your hips over there. Keep your hips over there. Okay. So, I want to get this Kimura, but I know it's hard to separate my training partner's arms. It starts from the ground. I get my elbow deep into my training partner's elbow to start out. I prop myself up, and I cross my ankles underneath my training partner, just like we talked about before. Now, I pull this up, keep your hands locked, and I look to get my shoulder as deep as I can underneath my training partner's elbow, so that as I walk out, my training partner's arm separates. From here, I go elbow deep. Now, try to connect the hands. It's not happening. I fight that hand down. I press it to the mat. Once I get the hand to the mat, it's time to go into my break. Okay? Just to make sure that you do a good job pressing the hand into the mat. If you leave it up in the air, he'll put it back on his belly and you have to work all over again to get your separation. From here, I turn my hips. I look to put that arm behind for the break. Okay? So I missed out on a couple different arm locks that are relevant in these triangle transitions, the omoplata and the tegatame. It's probably good that we spend a little bit of individual time on them anyway, especially the tegatame, because it is a little different than some of our other arm locks that we're going to transfer to here. All right, so whenever I'm in triangle situations, let's start forward facing. Okay? Typically, when we talk about Juji Gatame and arm locking, we're kind of talking about sequences that involve me going into my training partner's arm like so. Okay, whether I stay within the triangle or whether I throw my leg over to finish, right? This is typically what we're talking about. Okay? As I had mentioned before, there are often times when my training partner tries to hide his arm or even just tries to hide his elbow a little bit so that I can't get to these angles. Whenever my training partner does this, one productive thing for us to do is to put my training partner's wrist in our armpit and capture my training partner's elbow with our hand. Whenever we do this, we turn our training partner's elbow up like so to make sure it's rotated properly for the break, and we pinch our armpit in. Now, it is possible, even from this position, to separate my legs and bring my knee in, kick my other leg out, and break. Okay? I can also take my angle, like I normally would, break with separated legs, or even three-quarter Juji Gatame. Okay? So basically all we're doing here is getting my training partner's wrist in the pocket of my armpit and my hand underneath my training partner's elbow. Okay? I can submit right from here forward facing just by pushing and pulling, or by taking an angle, or by crossing my legs over my training partner's head like so. So now it's like a combination between Juji and Te. Okay? I have that wrist trapped in my armpit and my hand underneath the elbow. Okay? This transition will probably be available in most of your triangles, okay, especially these forward-facing ones. Okay? For example, if we did have ankle senkaku locked up, okay, if I was able to pass that into my armpit, of course I could break my training partner. If my training partner was laying on his back, and we had our back triangle locked, of course, if I cut my training partner's elbow and pinch inside, we can finish with our tegatame. So the truth is that most places that you guys have your traditional arm locks available, so long as it's possible to pass that arm into your armpit and grab the back of the elbow, you have a very strong submission hold there available to you, which is that tegatame. Now, I had mentioned omoplata as well. Okay? Omoplata tends to come into play a lot during these triangle situations as well. Right? This is kind of what's traditionally taught from this position. As my training partner hides the shoulder, what do? We transfer off to omoplata situation. Now, we had mentioned that we have a good counter to that, which is fighting to the reverse triangle, which is a nice submission as well. Okay? But let's say, for example, you wanted to move to your training partner's legs. Omoplata is a great transition here. where I can start dipping my knee in and begin moving to my training partner's legs, or whatever transition I want after omoplata. Okay? This is going to be available to us in most of our triangles as well. Okay? For example, if I locked up my reverse triangle, of course, I always have the ability to transfer myself into omoplata. Okay? Ankle senkaku. If I so desired, I could place my training partner's arm there. Perhaps he combated one of the arm bars or arm locks that I was trying to do. All right? And I pressed the arm into an omoplata position so I didn't lose my training partner. Okay? And once again, we can use this transition to move to any submission leg on our training partner's legs, or even potentially the upper body. Okay? That pretty much covers our Teigatame omoplata position, or submissions, and transference from triangles. Good work.